We just wanted to come out and visit a little bit about the upcoming trip. I'm leaving in the morning at 6:40 and headed to a base, and then what we will do is spend the next 8 days traveling throughout the world and trying to stop at some hospital visits and some military bases to see our troops. They did want us to be confidential about what cities we would be in and what days we would be there. But we will go to Germany, we will go to Turkey, we will be in Iraq, we will be in Kuwait, and we will be in Africa on our 8-day trip. And I think we will fly in an Army cargo ship, cargo plane going over. So we'll have some feel of what the military does when they get ready to go. We will probably spend a day going over and a day coming back. I think the trip's about 20 hours. I think Iraq's about a 9-hour change in time zones from us. And like I said, we'll be gone for 8 days, so we'll be back on the 4th, leaving tomorrow. Myself, Jim Tressel from Ohio State, Jim Grobe from Wake Forest, Houston Nutt from Ole Miss, Troy Calhoun, who has served in the Air Force, from Air Force, will be going. Rick Neuheisel will be going. And we'll also have Tommy Tuberville, who was coaching at Auburn last year, and he went on the trip last year. So he has been able to give us some insight into what we will do and where we will go and how we will get there. And looking at why we were going, Sally and I talked about this when we were asked about 3 months ago, and we thought it would be a great teaching tool for myself to learn about different parts of the world, but also to bring back and talk to our players, because we can learn firsthand from the soldiers and the Marines, and hopefully we'll get some video and some interviews that our players can use and look at and try to learn more about what's going on in the war and what's going on overseas. At the same time, Sally wanted to go with me, and they would not allow her to go, so she is not going because the wives could not go on this trip because of the facilities. You start looking at the military influence that we've had here. I think it first started with us with Ahmad Hall. For him to be in Afghanistan and Kuwait, and him serving and him talking to our team about boot camp, talking to our team about how it was with his experience in the Middle East and his experience with the military. One day we were sitting in here in two-a-days, and players were griping about how hard we were working them, how hot it was, and he started talking about the 109-degree temperatures in Iraq and those guys out with those heavy equipment, heavy uniforms, helmets, in that heat all day in the sand, and our guys really woke up and said, wow, we didn't even think about things like that as we go through. You also look at Roy Miller's father being in the Army, and Adam Ulatowski's brother, when we were out at El Paso, came out and ate the pregame meal with us. And Aaron Lewis's dad is a captain in the Air Force, or a colonel, excuse me, in the Air Force. He's a pastor, and he left to go back to the Middle East yesterday. And sitting around Memorial Day weekend and Memorial Day thinking about all the soldiers do for us was another motivator for us as we get ready to go. I also think, for me personally, I can learn about team structure from the military. I think leadership will be a huge part of our team's success next year, and learn more about the way they lead under adversity. And also start looking at keeping the positive attitude when things around you are tough, because these gentlemen are guys that, as Bill Little's son David said, they're at the tip of the spear. They have to be sharp every minute of every day, and they cannot have a day off. You never know when you leave in the morning if you're going to come back, and if you're going to come back the same way. So their lives are very different than ours. And as many similarities as there are between football and the military, theirs is real because they can die. And that's the difference. And that's why we quit using the term war, and we quit using the word battle when we start talking about a football game, because it's very, very different. But leadership is something that we can continue to learn. We also felt like in talking to Major General Hammond, who was the in charge of the 4th Infantry at Fort Hood, He said they need a break in their routine. You stay there 15 months for deployment or 18 months, and it's long, hard days. And David Little said the same thing. So just by a group of coaches going over to smile and say hello and say thank you and share the deep appreciation that our football program, the University of Texas, the state of Texas, for so many Texans that are fighting for us is something that we wanted to do. But also as Americans, and just say thank you to all the soldiers. We're taking some hats and taking some T-shirts, and I think from what I can tell, the days will be very long, and taking pictures, signing autographs. They said they'd give us some cell phones to help some of the Marines and soldiers call home while they're on the base. So I do think there are a lot of positive things that can occur, and I'm sure in talking to the coaches who have been before that I'll get more out of it than I'm going to give. Questions? Well, probably. We've talked to a lot of people that travel internationally, and especially with the military, about trying to handle jet lag and a 20-hour trip over and a 20-hour trip back on a big plane that you can't hear very well. And so it'll be interesting to see how much communication we can have going over and coming back. But they also say we'll be changing countries about every day, and there's a lot of downtime trying to get through customs and getting in and out. So I'm sure we'll have a lot of conversation. I think there's a lot of hurry up and wait. And then when we're on the bases, we'll be working. So they said we'll have absolutely no free time except for sitting trying to get through customs. But I think it'll be fun. You know, a lot of the guys we've known, Houston Nutt, of course, we've played them at Arkansas, and we've known Jim Tressel and Rick Neuheisel. I've known all those guys for a long time. I've known Tommy Tuberville for a long time. Jim Grobe's become a really good friend, and he coached at Air Force, and he actually called and asked to be on the trip because he wanted to give back. And I think all of us are a little anxious, but again, excited at the same time.
Did you ever get an opportunity to talk to Rick Barnes about his trip over there?
I did. I called Rick, and he said it's a very hard trip. You're exhausted, but at the same time, you just can't imagine the faces and the appreciation of the soldiers and the Marines that are over there. He said, and that's what General Hammond said. He said, you just sitting over here every day with, you know, we've got a recession and lives are tough and things are tough right now, but you can't imagine the life of a soldier. And that's what, I think that's why Sally and I decided to go.
What do you personally want to get? I mean, you talked about with the team and other things, but you yourself.
I think more than anything else, what I wanted to do is in a very small way, we turn on TV at night and we see pictures of the war and we see this happening. We see the number of soldiers that are dead, but we're so far removed from the war unless we have a family member or a friend that's involved. I saw Colt last year with his cousin, and I thought how emotional that was for him, for the young guy to get back and have all the tough things happen to him in the war. And talking to General Hammond, the day we spent at Fort Hood was very good for Sally and I. Because you can't imagine how different their lives are, that you think every day that you leave the house you may not come back. That touched my heart a lot, and to hear that the wives of some of the soldiers won't answer the phone when their husbands are deployed, or they see an officer walk into the front door and they start screaming and crying because they think it's bad news. I mean, I think we're so sheltered from that type life that Sally and I both really thought that in such a minor way, we could go over and just say thank you. And I've heard stories. I remember we had it happen, Bill, in the Vietnam War. Some of our players went over, and Scott Henderson went over, and that's been 40 years, you said? Right at 40 years ago, and Bill has talked to him, and his experience was wonderful, and I saw a group of coaches last year do it, and I thought it was really good for them. And I think probably they have to stay. I mean, we'll get more out of it, I think, from everything we can hear than the soldiers will. Theirs will be short term, but the memories that we'll have will be long term. I want to see Iraq. I want to see Kuwait. I've never been to those places. I've been to military hospitals, and it's a real positive and a downer. It's a tough deal walking in there now with some of those soldiers and trying to talk to them about the rest of their lives. But that's such a minor thing that I thought we could do.
Matt, who contacted you on this? Who's organizing it?
John, it's the Morale Entertainment Committee, I think, Thomas? Yeah, it's Michael Whalen, and they work with the Army. No, I do, in that my dad served in World War II, and he was in a plane, and they were shot down, but he lived, and in fact, he wouldn't talk to us about the war, and when he got back home, he would not fly to our games. So Dad would drive, but he never got in a plane again. Yes. No, he was a gunner. I'm sorry, in the back. He was not a pilot. Yes.
Mack, what type of reception, do you expect from? I mean, there's so many Texas men and women over there, A&M fans, Tech fans, UT fans. This is a situation where you can throw out the rivalry.
It really is. I thought this is, we're taking some Texas T-shirts, but they've got American flags on them, and the hats have American flags on them and Longhorns, and we appreciate the people who serve on the back, and we even got some coins, because in the military now for a commander to give a soldier or a Marine a coin is reward for something he's done well. So we're going to hand out some coins, and we felt like that it'll be a chance to pull all of us together in the state, and maybe me say thank you from the state of Texas to all of our soldiers. It really doesn't matter if you're a Tech fan. They'll have their guns up, and the Aggies will they'll all be kidding me with their thumbs up and take their pictures. But this is to make people smile. This is to make soldiers smile, and it's not about the rivalry or anything else.
What kind of plane your dad flew in?
I can get all that. I've got a picture of it but I'm sure I could get all that.
Was he in Europe or Pacific?
He was in the South Pacific, I think. Yeah. He would not talk about it much, so it's one of those that I couldn't get much information. But I do have a picture of the plane in my house.
Do you think the war's going to slip from the public's consciousness because of
I think that I don't hear people talking about the Marines and the soldiers as much as we used to, and this isn't about whether I personally or Sally personally agrees with war or not, because that decision's already been made. But it's about the people who are over there, and just it seems like it's why we made the decision to honor our spring game with our military, because I do think that the change of presidents, the economy, there's so many things going on in our lives right now that people are not talking about the young people that are fighting for us, and that's male and female. And when I heard that the average age of our military is 19 years old, and that's the average age of the guys that we deal with every day, it's touched my heart. And if I thought, since Sally and I have 2 boys and 2 girls, and they're getting a little bit older now, but at that age, if our children had been over there, and I've talked to enough people now, they're talking about every morning locking into the internet and knowing where their son, their husband, their wife are going that day. And General Hammond talking about that you sometimes call in the morning and you can't tell them exactly where you are, but you say, I love you, and I may not be able to talk to you again. It's a tough day. I mean, those are things that we just don't think about. We don't even talk about in our lives. And I thought there were things that I needed personally, because I'm spoiled rotten. And also that maybe I could bring some more awareness to other people, and especially even after our military personnel get home. I'm not sure that we reach out like we should and thank them. And on Memorial Day we do. Maybe on Memorial Day weekend we do. But I do think it's time for us to put thoughts and prayers in for people that are there. And when a life is lost, that's a mother that lost a son that she can't get back. I think stay positive, hang in there, get up every day and do what you do. But I'm amazed that after being involved as much as we have this spring with the military, that I hear countless stories of young men that come home and want to go back. They don't need to go back, but the war's not over. The fight, I miss my teammates. I miss my soldiers, and they re-enlist. We've had a number of re-enlistments in the stadium or in front of our team, and it's really emotional to see a wife with 3 little kids standing there and the soldier wanting to re-enlist, so he goes back. David Little re-enlisted after he got home and left his job as a lawyer and his family to go back. And it's really intriguing to me to see the commitment that these young people have to their country and to their jobs. And they say that enlistment in the military is up higher than ever right now, and that's also a very interesting fact when it's one of the more dangerous times to be in the military. But I really think that our small little piece of this will simply be to say thank you, and that we appreciate you, and that you can't imagine how many people do because you don't hear from them. And that coaches going may bring attention to others, that they'll just write a note or say thank you, or call a mom that son's serving somewhere and say, we appreciate your son and want you to know. We were at Camp Mayberry and a number of years ago, and infantry came home, and there were 2 soldiers that did not make it. And the mom of one of the soldiers was there and the dad of the other soldier. And it was so interesting to me that their questions were, how did my son die? Was he in pain? Was he proud? What kind of friend was he? What kind of soldier was he? Because that's all they had left. And the mom was just crushed, and the dad was so proud. And one of the soldiers said, would you let him go back today if he was alive? And he said, without a doubt, I would let him go back today. So it's a very unique group of people that serve our country. And I really think that, as Kirk said, we've slipped some in our appreciation for them and our prayers for them, and we need to continue to do that.
Was there any trepidation at all on your part, on Sally's part, in letting you go? Because, I mean, Iraq is still a war zone.
Yes, I think, Chuck, the number one, there's some concern for safety. I'm sure they'll take care of us, but again, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of soldiers every day that are out there in the war zone. I mean, they'll be protective of us, and there's some concern for safety and confidentiality, but not like those young people every day. So Sally and I both thought how foolish of us to sit here and say, I'm afraid to go on a military base or go to a hospital when these kids are fighting every day. And I say kids, there's kids and older Marines and soldiers. And the second part of that was some of the people that were very close to myself and our program, and some of my bosses were really concerned about just fatigue. Because in my job you get tired anyway, and so handling the change in time zones and handling the flight over and the flight back, we get back the night of June 4th, and I have a meeting with a group at noon on Friday in Dallas, and then we have our camp. The state track meets that weekend, and then we have our camp started, our first camp on Sunday, the 6th. So there are some stories, or the 7th. There are some stories of people that are sitting and fall asleep and fall in their soup. So I hope I don't fall asleep at camp. But again, in thinking of the possible consequences of the negatives, we thought that this was a chance in this position, not me, but this position, to reach out and get some attention for our military and just to say thank you and that we appreciate you. And Major General Hammond said the anticipation of someone coming that cares is so great for those young people that it gives them something to look forward to, because they don't have much to look forward to. The next day is the last day, and when they're looking at that 15-month period, 15 months and 18 months becomes forever, and if they can get things to break up that time period, it really, really helps them. So that's why we've decided to go. And I've talked to Jim Tressel, and I've talked to Jim Grobe and Tommy Tuberville. I have not talked to the other coaches, and they're like me. I mean, there's some anticipation, there's a little anxiety, but at the same time, how many people get to travel like this to say thank you, and how many people get to see Iraq? How many people get to see Kuwait? I mean, I want to see those places. I see them on TV, but I think when I get home, maybe I can share it with the team. We'll have some pictures to show them. But I also want to be able, when I'm watching TV, to appreciate what's happening over there a lot more. I can't imagine. I wonder about schools. I wonder about people's jobs. I wonder about food. I wonder about water. You wonder about safety when you go to a restaurant. I mean, I'd like to see some of that instead of wonder what it's really like when we've got none of that stuff, and the things that we worry about are so much more simple than that. I really think that it's a great opportunity for me to learn, and maybe I can share it with friends and with our team. But when you look at the influence in this state, one of the things I regret is 11 years at Texas, 11 and a half years, I haven't been to the hospital in San Antonio. And next spring, that's one thing I definitely want to do, is go to that hospital, because they say it's one of the best in the world for our military that's injured. And I'd love to go down there and spend the day as well. And the reason we went to Fort Hood, and we've been to Camp Mabry, we did not want to go overseas without trying to reach out here at home. And that's one thing I want Sally and I to do a better job when we get back, of trying to spend more time reaching out to some of our bases than we have in the past.